Hello, everyone. Happy Earth Day, all. Super, super excited to be with everyone. We are here, you will notice, outside. And I'm hoping that my fellow colleague, Gesina Beckert, will also join. Hey, Gesina.
Hi, Eve.
We're super excited today to talk to you all about Food for Climate League, and I'm just going to pull up a few slides to share with everyone this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. So, who is Food for Climate League? We are a relatively new 501c3 nonprofit, and we are all about creating a new food and climate narrative. So if you're tuning in, my guess is you care a whole lot about sustainability. Considering that this is a Food for Earth event, you probably also care a whole lot about food. What our entire goal is as an organization is to actually reframe what climate smart eating is, to make it easy and alluring for people to partake in, and to make these habits relevant to all people. And in doing so, we aim to drive demand for climate-friendly products and make what's good for us, what's good for planet, also good for businesses' bottom lines. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we need to have happen. And we feel that oftentimes that's not happening. So I'll just do a brief introduction for myself. This is my amazing team, first and foremost, who I feel so honored and lucky to work with every day. We are a woman-led team, as you can see, of individuals all around the world who are passionate about reframing the food and climate narrative. I am Eve Turo-Paul. I am an author, a cultural anthropologist, and the founder and executive director of Food for Climate League. And I am honored to be joined by Gesina. Gesina, do you want to just give a brief intro?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here and to be part of this stellar team for sure. I'm an innovation project manager with the Future Food Institute, and I actually also participated in the boot camp last year. So I'm also a proud climate and food shaper with them.
So, and this is our ecosystem, as you can probably tell, since Gesina has connections to Future Food Institute, as do so many more of our team members. Our organization was founded in direct partnership with Future Food Institute. They've just been absolutely critical and essential to our growth. And we've been lucky enough to work with a number of different organizations in the 18, 19 months of our existence, including Google, who we received our initial seed funding from, as well as Unilever, Sodexo, Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute. We were lucky enough to receive a grant from Eat the Change last year. And we've also worked as well with Carry Foods. We also do our research in partnership with Menus of Change, University Research Collaborative, and Data Central, a market research firm here where I am in Chicago. And what's really important to us is not just doing research for research's sake. We want people to implement it. Sometimes we're taking on projects in direct coordination with a company who plans to immediately implement it to further their own sustainability initiatives. But other times we're actually running workshops, doing trainings to help people figure out how can you guys take the things that we're learning and put it to use right away. And we work to assist governments, NGOs, for-profit companies as well. So our wish for today is to foster a conversation on how we can each be a climate superhero by choosing delicious, nutritious, affordable foods that are great for us and great for the planet. And you may have noticed I'm outside. Gesina is also outside. We encourage you today, it's Earth Day. Get outdoors. Not that we don't want you to look at the slides that we labored over, but really we're perfectly fine if you turn this on your phone, turn off video, and just listen to us. We, whether it's right now or later or even tomorrow, please do enjoy the outdoors. And we're going to start things off with a little bit of an activity. So we're curious to know whether it's been hiking or camping or gardening or perhaps hoarding houseplants in the chat, which I believe is available for everyone. Yes. Getting used to the streaming network we're on. Have you been spending more time in or with nature this past year? And if so, what have you been doing to connect? And we're going to come back to that later to look through what people have been saying. So a little bit of the setting. Food for Climate League was really founded on this understanding that people are concerned about the climate crisis and they're obsessed with food, particularly millennials, Gen Zers. We spend a disproportionate amount of our discretionary income on food and spend a great deal of our time on focusing on food media. We also know that food is the clearest avenue for impact on both human and planetary health. Yet, a lot of sustainability initiatives are remaining niche instead of the norm. Oftentimes products, campaigns, they're not earning the traction that they could be. And what we believe is that this is in large part because we often talk about these issues in a way that turn off a lot of people, make them feel as though they're not a part of this conversation, that this way of eating is not relevant to them. Our whole goal as an organization is to do the research, to create new food and climate narratives that speak to the many and not the few in order to democratize sustainable eating. We say that we want to show people how these sustainable ways of eating can help you feel more in control over your own health, connected and bonded to a community, and empowered to change the world. And in doing so, we aim to reward the companies and the organizations that are doing the right things by giving them a bigger market to sell to, thereby also creating the change that this planet just so desperately needs. So we also believe that the time is right now to thoughtfully connect the dots between food and climate to generate these meaningful shifts in our food system. And some of you may be thinking, okay, but we're in the midst of a global pandemic. Well, if you talk to any market researcher about behavior change, they'll say, you got to target someone during a moment of disruption. Well, we're in a moment of disruption, right? Usually people are saying, target somebody who try to get, someone to change their behavior after they've gotten married or graduated from college. Well, the whole world right now is primed to start new behaviors. And we saw that in March, April of last year. We're all going to continue to kind of go through this transition, this moment of disruption. Furthermore, food is democratizing sustainable eating is in and of itself a form of social justice. What we're really talking about here and what we are so passionate about as an organization is speaking to a wider diversity of people and really connecting the dots between the fact that there's such a wide array of ways of eating in a sustainable manner that can be culturally relevant, accessible, affordable, delicious, totally Instagram worthy, but also with the ability to empower communities who are, we believe, too often being left out of the sustainability conversation. So another reason why the time is now is that, in fact, concern about the climate has actually gone up over this past year. As an organization, I remember March of last year, around Earth Day of last year, thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to lose momentum. People are going to be focused on their personal health instead of the planet and the environment. And that's not what's happened. People have become more concerned about the environment. So really, this is the moment. We need to harness this moment because food can save the earth for us. This is also something we talk about as an organization. Earth will be fine. Mother Earth will be fine. It's us we need to worry about. So I'm wondering if anyone has been writing in, have you been spending more time in nature this past year? And if so, what have you been doing outdoors? I don't think we have a ton of people contributing right now. Maybe you're actually out on your walks, which would be wonderful if you're actually outside. So if you haven't been spending more time in nature this past year, I urge you to do so. But statistically, more and more of us have, which is really amazing. Sales of hiking gear, camping gear are up. Edible seed sales were sky high here in the US as the pandemic started. So it's always good to be spending more time in nature. And Gesine is going to walk through a bit of our research in a little bit that's showing just why that might also be critically important for the sustainable food movement. So first, a little bit of context around Food for Climate League's foundational research. And then Gesine is going to go through a review of our latest research that was conducted in partnership with Google and the Sodexo Future Food Collective, which are new insights that you'll want to see. So in 2019, we set out to answer a pretty basic question, which is, what is the current food and climate narrative? How are companies and organizations talking about topics like regenerative, biodiversity, social justice, plant-forward diets? And then we also talked with a number of experts, and our question was, well, what is the conversation, but then what's working, what isn't, and why. And we talked to people who are in the food and beverage industry, but also climate psychologists and climate communications experts. And there were a few key takeaways from that work. First, we were able to validate that, yes, it is very hard to talk about food and climate issues for three key reasons. One, these are complex agricultural concepts. When you talk about sustainable agriculture, that can mean something different depending on where you are, what the season is, what the crop is, what other crops that crop is being grown with. It's quite complicated. The second part that makes this really difficult, and this was super interesting for me, was to learn really about the difficult emotions that climate content can trigger. Really talking to experts who revealed to us that even though it might not be top of mind, in fact, sometimes we might not even be aware of it, talking about the climate can oftentimes bring up really difficult emotions like anxiety, guilt, or grief that can cause people to just turn off, shut off. And oftentimes those are the people who we really want to be engaging. Third, we're talking about changes to personal food habits, right? Anytime that you're talking about food, it's a core part of our identity. The other key takeaway from our research was that there's a lot of mistaken assumptions being made. One is that everyone will take action around the climate if they're just educated about it. You see this in a lot of campaigns that are trying to educate with statistics, sometimes even fear-mongering. That's really not how you do behavior change. I mean, not that education doesn't have a role. It certainly does. Information certainly, facts certainly have a role here. But that in and of itself is not enough to create behavior change. Just think of how many times someone has told you not to eat something really delicious because it's not good for you. That's not enough to make you stop oftentimes. Number two mistaken assumption is that sustainable goods and practices can only resonate with a small portion of the population. And this is really the biggest sticking point to us because we believe that most of humanity wants to eat in a sustainable way, that sustainable foods and behaviors can meet people where they are, and that it can really resonate with a wider swath of the global population. We just need to be talking about it differently. And third mistaken assumption is that you have to talk about the climate to create climate beneficial behavior change. And what this was really getting to is that sometimes someone can be educated about what's happening. They might know, they might also care, but talking about the climate might be triggering those difficult emotions in them. And the reality is there are so many wonderful, directly accessible and relevant ways to be eating in a sustainable manner that we don't really need to be even talking about the climate oftentimes in order to guide people towards more climate beneficial behaviors. The reality is there's a lot of missed opportunities here when it comes to what's on our plate. The FAO estimates that 75% of the world's food is generated from only 12 plants and 5 animal species. Yet there are up to 300,000 edible plants and we eat less than 200 of them. That's crazy. Just from a culinary perspective, think of all the amazing flavors and textures and colors that are just waiting to be eaten and discovered on your plates. We as humanity should be celebrating perennial grains and local ingredients and more varieties, responsibly raised meats, imperfect foods, indigenous foods, and global spices, even cover crops. There's, again, a lot of really great things that we could and should be eating. And so the question becomes, well, how should we really be talking about food and climate issues in order to expand the appeal of sustainable foods and ways of eating? And this is what Food for Climate League is all about. So I'll do one more activity. If you happen to be able to chime in, please do feel free and comment in the comment box. What sustainable food behaviors have you taken on and maintained through the pandemic? It was really interesting to see people at the beginning of the pandemic start to garden, a lot of people wasting less food, a lot of people cooking. And we actually asked this question a year ago on Earth Day. But the difference here is we're wondering, what have you maintained? What sustainable behaviors, not have you started, but have you maintained now a year later? So I'm going to just tee up this next section, and then my colleague Gesine is going to take over. Here, we're going to really get into the weeds on the work that Food for Climate League was doing in the fall of 2020. Thanks to our awesome sponsors, Sodexo Future Food Collective, which includes Sodexo, ASME, Carry Foods, and Unilever, and as well as our sponsor food at Google, who is a fabulous team really invested in researching sustainable food. So these are the key questions that our sponsors were trying to answer. So first, from the Sodexo Future Food Council, how might we increase purchases of agro-biodiverse menu items through communications? Now, what does this really mean in layman's terms? Sodexo wants to include a greater diversity of ingredients onto their menus. They want to increase the biodiversity of their menus to reach their sustainability initiatives. But how do you get somebody to buy, purchase, pick up a menu item that includes ingredients that they've never heard of? This was the challenge. From the Food at Google team, 2 challenges. 1, is a climate icon an effective method for inspiring climate smart food choices? How effective is it going to be? And 2, what communications approaches lead to the highest purchase intent and why? Meaning, how through language can we make people more interested in a sustainable dish? So I am now going to hand things over to Gesine. Gesine, just tell me when you want me to move forward on the slides, and I will do so.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Eve. And we heard from Andrene that she likes to eat herbs and veggies during this time. So that's nice. Yeah, I mean, hello, everyone. Happy Earth Day. I hope you were able to spend some time outside, or you can enjoy nature through our videos a little bit now. I'm really excited to share this research with you today because I think some of these findings are just so inspiring and will help us in our goal to create more sustainable food behavior, which I think brings us together. If you're watching today or if you're watching this in recording, you probably care about this and you probably want to know, how can I be part of this? What can I do more? And that's really what we're also all about and what we found. So yeah, I'm going to spend a few minutes now going through this research and the findings that Eve has already introduced. Next slide. With Sodexo, we received 3 different dishes, and this was really around this topic of agro-biodiversity. The ingredients that we're talking about, the Future 50 foods, you can see them here on the bottom. Things like spelt, soy, wild grains, things that might not be as familiar to people. So the challenge is really, how do we make them more appealing? How do we get people excited and interested in these dishes? So we had different types of proteins: animal protein, an analog protein, and a plant-based protein. With the research that FCL already has done, plus additional literature review and conducting a few qualitative interviews, we identified 3 communication directions that we wanted to test and see, do they drive more sustainable choices? The first one is traditional and time-tested. What we found is that people are looking for familiarity. They want to be able to understand what is in my food. So that was the first direction. The second direction is around healing. Looking for healing personally, but also environmentally. So what is this food doing to me, to my body, but also what is it doing to the soil? How could we bring that out in order to increase interest? And the second one was really around simplification and fun. How could we appeal to people by making food exciting, creating an amazing experience through food? And we brought these different communication types out in the different prototypes that we were giving. So the hearty beef and spelt stew in the control became a classic beef and spelt stew in the traditional and time-tested version. I think we started with a centuries-old recipe. So really talking to those people that are looking for familiarity in their food. With the analog protein dish, we tested the same different communication directions in the restorative and healing direction. We called it rejuvenating ragu. So really appealing to that feeling of health, rejuvenation, which can be both personally and environmentally. The last dish was the plant-based vegetable curry, and we wanted to make it fun and crazy. So we just called it Kai's Crazy Curry Bowl to really appeal to a feeling of excitement when eating it. We sent these prototypes off to the American population and asked them a few questions. So broad demographics, different types of ages, genders, incomes, all in the US. And then we asked them, would you order this item? would you go to a restaurant just because of this item? How often would you buy it? We really wanted to understand how would they interact with this. This was an online survey, also given that right now we can do a lot of in-person testing. But we asked them these questions to understand how does the different communication direction influence their interest in a dish. With Google, we did a similar project. We were, again, given 2 different recipes. One was a sustainable animal protein base, a stir-fried beef, and one was a plant-based dish, an egglet stuffed acorn squash. We undertook another round of research and had conversations with respondents about their relationship to sustainable food and identified 5 communication directions. One, it was really interesting to find that people, when they were interested in the climate, often didn't make the connection to food. So we wanted to make that easy. We wanted to show them directly, how does this food impact the climate? Second was around origins, about creating a relationship to the food, making the connection that food actually grows somewhere. Food may come from the field. Food comes from an animal. It doesn't come from the supermarket or the store. So we wanted for them to make that connection easier. So how could we enable them to do that? The third one was again around mood. How can we make it fun and exciting? How can we take all the pressure and all the complexity that we feel in our lives out and just have a fun moment in food? The fourth one, again, was connected to personal health. But here it was more so about measuring and taking control of one's personal health by giving people the option to know that this food is going to impact my health positively in an easy way. And the fifth direction was around community. Because one of the really interesting findings was that people associate exciting and the best food experience with community, with sharing, in togetherness. So how could we speak to this need of eating together to make a dish more appealing? We applied these also to the icons because Google was asking again, how does iconography impact food choices? So for each of these different directions, we developed an icon that could communicate what we were talking about, such as this is coming from the field, this is from a pasture-raised cow, this is this is going to show you like a smart device, a Fitbit maybe, how this is going to impact your health. And again, we sent this off. This time we sent it off globally to international participants and changed the title and the description. For example, for the plant-based dish, talking about origins, we really wanted to make clear where these products are coming from. I think you've heard this a lot. People are interested and curious about where's my food from? How is it grown? We wanted to give them that chance by clearly communicating it in the title. Day 1, acorn squash, Mediterranean vegetables. For health and tech, for example, given the current situation, immunity is very important for people. We wanted to bring that out clearly by starting with, this is an immune boosting dish. The second prototype, the animal-based protein, we applied these same communication directions, for example, in the area of mood. We called it, this is a comforting beef bulgogi dish. So really to inspire that feeling of, oh, this is going to make me feel relaxed. This is going to make me feel good. How would this communication inspire people? And this time, beyond the demographics and the questions that we asked before, we also asked questions around their psychographics. We wanted to dig one layer deeper and understand, what are these people feeling? How are they doing in this day and age? Where we all know it's so different. We're experiencing something that we've never experienced before. How is this influencing people's anxiety levels? How do they still connect to community and to nature when they're maybe constrained to their homes and they can't do what they usually do? So this gave us another layer of understanding of what drives decisions. And now we can share some of these findings that are really, really exciting. So the number one is, language alone can shift purchase intent. So by changing just the description and the title, we saw a different purchase intent from our respondents. Purchase intent means we asked them, how likely would you be to purchase this product? And the ones that said probably and very likely, this is counting as a high purchase intent. So what we see here, from the control of the hearty beef stew to the traditional and time-tested communication direction, we increased this purchase intent by 8%. That's a significant increase. Similarly, in the analog protein dish, from the vegetarian butcher spaghetti bolognese in the control, changing it to rejuvenating ragu, speaking to this need of healing, we were able to increase the purchase intent by 5%. The second finding was that eaters are already open and willing to taste and try plant-based and analog protein dishes. Maybe we don't need to be so concerned that they will actually be able to try. We can tap into this opportunity. How this showed up was that the control dish across the different dishes, and this is the Sodexo project, received a similar purchase intent. So without changing any language and applying any of the communication direction, there was already an interest in the analog protein dish. Now you may say spaghetti bolognese is also something that is familiar and that people may know. So we may want to try this more, but we were really inspired to see that already there is an interest in trying them. The third one is that the purchase intent of a dish really varies by demographics. And this matters. It really matters to know who you're talking to in your communication. This matters in general, but in food specifically. So think about Sodexo's food service options. They may serve food in a college campus or at an office. Very different people that will daily choose these options. Our research showed that if you want to talk to millennials, the restorative and healing communication direction is their preferred option. If you want to talk to boomers, go with a traditional and time-tested variation because that is what resonates with them. Our fourth finding was around the relationship to nature. So this comes from the psychographics, and these are indications that we found, and we'd be excited to continue this research. But something that we found so inspiring, and I think for me it was one of the most interesting findings, and one of the reasons why we asked you to go outside and to explore nature is that it really changes how you make decisions, how we make decisions. We found that 58% of the general population that we tested feels intimately connected to nature. Now, we just looked into this nature cohort, what is exciting for them, and we found that all plant-based dishes, no matter the communication direction, had a much higher purchase intent than the general population. So by changing one's connection to nature, we maybe influence their sustainable food choices. This was also proven with the animal protein dish, because what we saw is that the one that was communicating the climate benefits and really focused on showing this has a positive impact, it has a good climate score, was the only one in the animal-based dish that also received a higher purchase intent from this nature cohort. And what we also saw is that this nature cohort is more likely to be millennials and to feel connected to community.
Yes, and just for further clarification, so this meant that the nature cohort of respondents who said that they feel more intimately connected with nature were 8 to 21% more likely to purchase this dish or say they were going to purchase this dish over the general population. So this is, again, it's an initial finding, but one that's super, super interesting that we are eager to dig into.
Yeah, thank you, Eve. The next one is also related to these psychographics. So still more of an indication, still warrants further research, but gives an interesting perspective to look at how to influence food choices. And it's around emotional hungers and feelings. So we asked people to rate, to agree or disagree on certain statements. One was, I feel strongly connected to a community, or I rarely feel lonely. So the people that here disagreed do not feel connected to community. They do feel lonely. And we saw that in this cohort where connection is missing, the communication direction appealing to mood and community through food was actually resonating much better. What we saw here was a 15 to 17% higher purchase intent over the control. And interesting, lastly, icons had an unclear impact. So while testing these icons, we were looking for indications in the feedback from our respondents of how they were talking about these icons. So to clarify, we didn't ask specifically what they thought about an icon. We just added it to the overall dish. We changed the communication, and we changed the title, we changed the description, and we added an icon. And then I reviewed almost 9,000 responses to understand, did people pick up on this icon? Did they actually comment on it? Did this change anything? And what we found was that few people actually picked up on it. We saw that in the US, only 0.2% mentioned the climate score or anything related to the gamification, to the app, to where food was coming from. It was a bit higher in Europe and in Asia, but overall, the language seemed to matter much more. And this is also something where we'd like to go deeper to understand, is this true, and how did the online environment impact people here? And but in general, that's what we found. So in summary, there's 6 really interesting insights. Language alone can impact sustainable food choice and appeal. Language matters. Second, eaters are already open to plant-based and analog protein dishes. We can tap into this opportunity. 3, the way a dish is described appeals differently among different demographics. So it is important to know who you're talking to, know your audience in order to appeal to them. 4th one, relationship to nature likely impacts sustainable food choices. What does this mean? How could we bring nature into the environment of making food choices? The 5th one, emotional hungers likely impact sustainable food choice and appeal. So how can we speak to these emotional drivers? We can probably all relate that when we feel sad, we choose a different food than when we feel happy and excited. And the last one is around icons that had an unclear impact in sustainable food choice, which is really something we'd like to further explore. But originally, language seemed to matter more.
Yes. Gesine, thank you so much for walking through these findings. Gesine was really leading so much of our work last year. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, we were limited in the same ways that everybody was by having to test everything online. But we were super, super excited by the fact that we found so many statistically significant findings, even amongst this cohort of online survey takers. So again, this is why we want you guys to be outside. We're really eager to see with further testing whether this relationship to nature will drive sustainable food choices, and also dig into all of these other aspects as well. So again, the time really is now for us to be focusing on these new ways of talking about food and climate. We're in this really unprecedented moment in time when people want to regain a sense of autonomy. They are concerned about their personal health, but also their community, right? We're in a real moment of thinking about others as well. We are also very much seeing the impact one person can make and the ripple effect of that. We're watching as nature heals itself. I remember at the very beginning of the pandemic, seeing all of these different stories about how nature was so rapidly restoring itself with less people out and about. There really is a collective energy at this moment of global citizenship. And again, we're all primed for big changes in our behavior. We, those of us who are so passionate about this topic, need to capture this moment. It's time to start talking about these ways of eating in a new way. Also because so many of us are already taking on sustainable food behaviors. We're buying in bulk, getting more dried goods, canned goods, eating locally, eating seasonally, wasting less food. And again, if you guys want to chime in, tell us what sustainable food behaviors have you taken on during this period of time and actually maintained through the pandemic. We are eager to hear from you. Andoeni had said that she's eating herbs and veggies from her mom's garden. I know that so many of us are. But again, there's this really amazing thing that's happening in this moment, that people are starting to familiarize themselves with their local food systems. There's a lot of people who for the first time were even just thinking about how their food gets to them and the people that were required in order to get that food to them. And we're just super excited to see the behaviors that people have taken on. Our approach as an organization is to focus on our core human needs. How might we talk about sustainable food and sustainable food behaviors in a way that's relevant to people's emotions, no matter where they are emotionally? Whether at the core of things, you're really craving a sense of control and safety because this world is crazy and stressful and difficult. we can be really focusing on the nutrients in our food, the immune boosting properties in our food, the flavors, the affordability, with community, which all of us are so desperately in need of right now. We can be celebrating the heritage that we can bring to our plates, the regional parts of, what we can honor regionally on our plates, and also indigenous ways of eating, heirloom grains, all of these different ways of connecting to a sense of a wider community, but also our local communities. And then purpose. How can we empower people through their food choices? Connecting, again, what Gesine was talking about, connecting the dots. How do we get people to make those connections? Maybe it is through a carbon label, maybe it's not, but maybe it's also about talking about being a change maker, talking about doing things that are climate smart. And the more that we start to connect these dots, the more we can engage. So in leaving you all, or getting ready to leave you all, we really would urge each and every one of you, whether it's this evening or it's tomorrow morning, to reconnect with your food and drink. Our findings were primarily about feeling intimately connected to nature, but one of the most beautiful things about eating, of course, is that you're consuming nature. And so we do have a mindfulness meditation that I think Gesine is going to share in the comments, that you all can be taking home with you. And I urge you to listen to it tonight or tomorrow as you're having your cup of coffee or tea. So as an organization, these are just a few of the things that Food for Climate League offers. We do original reports and custom surveys, a lot of different innovation sprints. Really what we are focused in on it is interviewing people through a number of different methodologies to get to understanding their emotions, where they are, what sustainable food and food culture looks like in their worlds. What does that mean to them? How can we reframe this conversation so that it is more relevant to them, more inclusive, less elitist, and more celebratory of a greater diversity of ways of eating? We also run communications workshops. We have 10 best practices that we have developed as an organization. We want to help you put those 10 best practices to work. So we have created a workshop that will guide you through really rapid prototyping, ways of editing, whether it's on-package communications, whether it's a sustainability report or a social media post, to drive wider engagement. Really, it's almost like therapy for your communications, identifying what in your materials might be excluding people that you might not even know about, and what are the things that you should be celebrating in your product that really you should be pulling forward. So this is just one poll of respondents after a workshop from this past February that we're really proud of. So before the training, we asked if people agreed or disagreed with the statement. They feel confident about being able to effectively communicate their climate smart food offerings. You'll see most people strongly disagreed. And after the training, most people agreed and strongly agreed. We also do have a 65-page report. If any of you want to really get down into the details of this, our report and more information is available on our website. It's called How to Talk About Food and Climate Communications Best Practices. And in there, we really do a deep dive into the landscape analysis and the expert interviews that I was talking about before, but then really walk through each of our 10 best practices for food and climate communications in depth. We also provide additional context of how this all relates to COVID-19, but also the racial justice movement, millennial and Gen Z food trends. This is all there for you. So thank you so much for listening in, for being a part of this fantastic 24-hour live stream event. If anyone is interested in learning more, you can go to foodforclimateleague.org or reach out at info@foodforclimateleague.org. We do have some time for questions, comments, if anyone would like to join in. I believe Sina is also going to share a link to a form. If you're interested in working with us in any way, be it an internship, we're thinking about forming a Gen Z panel. If you're a Gen Zer and interested in this topic, we'd love to hear from you. And as always, we're always looking for additional sponsors and collaborators to really fuel our efforts to do more research, but also then creating plans for NGOs and government organizations and companies to implement our findings so that we can drive forward the sustainable food movement that is just so desperately needed.
Yeah.
So, Sina, I don't know if anything is coming in. I feel like I can't see the comments on my side.
Yeah, they're on the right. I don't see anything coming in right now.
Okay.
Yeah. But wow, what exciting insights. Maybe if we have some time now, I think we have like another 8 minutes.
Yeah.
What for you was really eye-opening, given that you have done so much in this space?
So I think that one of the other areas that I would really love to be doing additional research is on the emotional implications of this work. So we're in a moment right now when we're facing a global population with sky-high rates of loneliness and anxiety and stress. And the fact is that does change, right, our food behaviors. And so often when we have those elevated rates of stress and anxiety, we just want comfort food. We want things that are familiar and enticing. And what we're talking about here is actually driving people towards new ways of eating. Change is hard when you're uncomfortable. But I was really heartened by the amazing shifts in purchase intent that we saw amongst those who said that they were lonely, missing community. It's important to note, so we shifted the purchase intent 15 to 17% over the control amongst that cohort. But that cohort in general was just less interested in the plant-based dish. And so there's still a hill to climb, still a lot of research to do to figure out whether it requires shifting the recipe, the ingredients itself, in order to make it more relevant to people. Maybe it's associating it with a dish that people are more familiar with that brings them comfort. Maybe that, eggplant stuffed squash should have been in a taco. Or on a pizza, something that people could just relate to a little bit more. I don't know. What about you? What are the kind of the areas of food and climate communications that you're interested and excited about?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was so new to work with the Food for Climate League in really going deep into these emotional drivers. And I think just by it's almost a year that we're working together, yeah, I expanded my horizon so much. So I would really encourage people, because I often felt a little stuck. Like, what can we do? How can I talk to people? I know there is exciting alternatives and we can make it possible, but I didn't feel like I had the right angle to do it. And I think just by working together and diving deeper into this, there is an opportunity to really change that and feel myself more empowered. And I think that's also something that came out in all the research, that so many people of us who want to drive change often feel like they're not enabled and they don't have the tools to do that. So I think that's really exciting about this work, is that this can make tools much more available to many more people.
Yes. I'm also seeing the notes that perhaps there isn't a way for people to be adding in their comments right now super directly. So anyhow, I apologize if anybody was trying to comment. Please do reach out to us, info@foodforclimateleague.org. Just, kind of leaving things on, this positive note. There's been a lot of announcements today about new carbon initiatives. I do feel like this Earth Day has been different than other Earth Days. And maybe that's just the people in my world and in my circle, but I think that there's a lot of energy around this work. And for all of you who are working in the food space, there isn't a more important side. There isn't a more important area that anyone could be working in. Food impacts us physically. It impacts the world so significantly, but it also impacts us emotionally. And so those of you who are out there doing this work to drive a more sustainable food movement, we applaud you. We as an organization want to assist you. We want to collaborate with you. So please do reach out. We're eager to be doing that work. On the communications front, I think there's also this untapped I love the birds. Yeah, Casina's in Hawaii, by the way. If you want to feel envy on every single business call, work with somebody who's in Hawaii. But there's so much energy right now around these ways of eating, and some of the most exciting things that we're seeing is a growing understanding of the diversity of ways to eat sustainably. So how this is showing up in people's lives. There's so many different ways for this to come to life. It can be using everything that you have root to stem. It can be using local ingredients, heirloom ingredients. And that's the part of the work that I'm really excited about. And I'm also excited about as an eater. All the things that hopefully will be on menus very soon. So hi, Julia.
Hi, Eve, Christina. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. I find it very interesting because I myself never done research taking so much of the psychological elements into account. So I wanted to thank you all, and I'm pretty sure that our audience, maybe those who are watching the recording later, can get in touch and
Yes.
learn more about your findings.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Also very happy to see another climate shaper on screen. And before we go and introduce the last one for this 24-hour marathon, we will have some bites from the Transfoodmation. So thank you so much for your talk.
Thanks so much for having us. Have a good evening, day, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.